All right, hello and welcome to our Pitsco Education and ESUCC support webinars for the robotics purchase that took place here in Nebraska. And I'm really excited that we have a number of educators and people in support of this purchase on the call today, as we're going to get an opportunity to explore some of the different solutions that are available. We're really going to go through the different grade levels with this series. And so for this particular one, we're talking about solutions for grades 3 through 5. And so to start things off, I'll do a quick introduction and say we have Eileen Barks, Craig Hicks, and Jason Everett, all who are members of our ESU network statewide. And then we also have Jake Rudisil, Preston Frazier, and Steph Forbes with Pitsco. And so this is going to give us an opportunity with the expertise that's on the call today to spend some time exploring, okay, are these devices, these solutions that we have for grades 3 through 5? And then where might that meet what we're doing in the classroom? And so we're going to have a little bit of just a brainstorming, kind of informal share out to support educators as they're starting to think through where this might meet the work that they're getting a chance to do on a daily basis. And so we're just going to start going through the different solutions and lean on our Pitsco friends to talk through what that particular solution can do. And so we're going to start with CodeCube as the first one. All right, so Jake, if you would, tell us a little bit more about CodeCube?
Yeah, and I'll probably loop in Steph a little bit as well, but at a very high level, CodeCube is what we consider no-fear coding. We recognize that a lot of elementary educators don't have a heavy background in computer science, and so one of the biggest things that we want to make sure that we do is empower anybody to feel like they can overcome those barriers and really start coding in a matter of minutes. So from a very high level, the overall concept of CodeCube weaves in some arts to it as well. And it's a browser-based platform from a standpoint of the coding aspect. So you literally, there's no login required. There's no applications installations requirement. And so you can be up and running in a matter of about 5 minutes. I also might kick Steph because I know that this was something that you were planning on talking about, if that's all right.
Sure. So CodeCube, it's a wearable technology. So kind of a little bit of a different variation from the type of coding and robotics experience that students might have using other resources. We tried to keep it really simple with the idea of students with no background in coding and robotics, making it very approachable and easy to get into. So some of the technology that's incorporated into it is programmable LED screens is primarily what the students will be using to code their outputs and their solutions. And then there is a built-in accelerometer and a sound output. So keeping the technology simple where the teachers can really focus in on the coding experience and starting to build those basic coding skills. The application uses block-based programming to create, and the students can create artistic animations, colors, patterns, and they can play sounds and change as it moves around. So one of the activities that they can do is they can create a rock paper scissors game where they actually code the game using the wearables, and then they can play against each other. It also uses, as Jake mentioned, it's web-based, so it works on Chrome platform. It's really easy to store. It comes in the box, and students can take it off and put it back in. So it's really easy from class to class to be able to clean up, put it away, and then have the next class come in. Classes can share a set of code cubes. The idea kind of student to code cube ratio is 1-to-1 to really develop that personalization. But if a classroom needs, it can be used one code cube per 2 students. There's an activity guide that provides the lesson plans, lesson ideas, activity ideas for teachers. There are 10 kind of progressive activities to help the students and the teachers get going, and then there's a culminating challenge. On the resource page that will be provided, there are out-of-the-box videos. There are videos to support each activity, so teachers will have it in a print version, but then also in a video version that they can share with the students. And the idea is to create enough resources where teachers don't have to be the expert, but they have the resources available to be able to introduce it in a way that's not intimidating to them. And as Jake mentioned, this really brings in the arts. So kind of thinking about some after school use or a summer camp use, or maybe as a kind of a pull-out coding use. There are a few activities that do touch on math built into the activity guide, but this solution really kind of highlights coding in the arts and at that very basic and introductory level.
Steph, one thing that I thought about as a use case that we've seen in classrooms, but then also just activities throughout Pitsco is you'll see a theme in the elementary levels when it comes to computer science and coding of storytelling. And so I remember an activity that we did where we broke into groups and we actually had to use the code cube to tell a story using sounds and pictures in the accelerometer. So if you had your code cube move a certain direction, it would pop up a graphic or an animation that would help you tell the story. And so we broke into small groups. We kind of framed it. Here's the parameters of what it is, but then we let the students be creative to tell their story. And so with Code Cube, you can customize the LED matrix to different colors to create your own images. And then based on the depth of how you want to do that, you can make motion and those types of things as well. So one thing that popped into my head about how we've seen Code Cube used in classes is through storytelling type activities, or then also games like Steph mentioned with the rock, paper, scissors.
I guess then ask some of our ESU friends, as you're listening into what Steph and Jake are sharing here, whether it be in your own experience with maybe similar devices or just in hearing a little bit more about Code Cube, where do you see that meeting what you know to be true of our Nebraska classrooms and some of the opportunities in that 3 through 5 grade band?
This is Eileen. So I think I think the kids are super eager to get their hands on this. And I love the connection of the storytelling and making sure that like we can cross integrate this with ELA. Like we can tell the story in ELA and then we can code it in science, or we can code it in our computer lab, wherever. But I love that integration. I do have a question, and maybe one of you guys can answer that too. Andrew, I might be going off script, but
Let's go with it.
So Jake, you were really good about showing that web page and then just starting to code right away. Is there an option for a lesson to teach kids what does this mean? What does this one mean? Because some of our teachers are going to unbox this and have never done coding ever.
Sure.
Never.
Yeah, so I'm gonna kick it to Steph because she's gonna talk about our e-learning course for Code Cube that I believe was included as an option. But if not, anybody can still purchase this online at pitsco.com. You want to talk about e-learning?
Yes. So we do have a series of e-learning courses that are for teachers that kind of helps them get comfortable, helps them plan out how they're going to implement it, what lessons that they'll align it to, and how they plan to roll it out. The teacher resource, the teacher's guide, also kind of outlines like day one. If I'm going to prep to do this activity, here's going to be the vocabulary. Here's where I start. Essentially, is like here's where I would start with my students, and here's what I would introduce them to initially, and here's how I would walk them through getting familiar and getting comfortable in the app through an activity that they'll work with. So they'll be introduced to a coding concept or an application, and then they get to practice it. So it's not necessarily just jumping in, but there's that teacher resource that will really help guide the teacher through, here's what I need to prep the students with, and then here will be kind of the facilitation and progression of them learning the applications as well as getting familiar with the app and how it interacts with the Code Cube itself.
Yeah, and similar with the screen that I just showed, as you continue to scroll down, the stuff that Steph was talking about, those resources are readily available to be downloaded. And from a Pitsco general standpoint, most digital resources are available free of charge. Usually printed copies, you can purchase some printed copies at a price, and then some solutions come with the e-learning courses. If you continue to scroll all the way down, it also has related products, just like on most e-commerce sites. And so with Code Cube, I scrolled all the way down to the bottom, and it had the e-learning course available that any educator can go on and purchase. It's $49. So if they want a more in-depth experience opposed to the teacher's guide that's there, that's available as well. So a lot of different ways to find support through our website and through us.
Yeah, and that e-learning course, it's all self-paced. So once you start it, you can finish it whenever you want. You're always going to have access to it as well. And so it's always there for you to use as a resource as well. And so it's a helpful tool in that regard.
I'll add to Eileen's remarks too, in terms of the integration with the different curricular areas, the idea of doing storytelling, really the idea of integrating that with the math and science. Storytelling is such a great way to get kids introduced. They already know how to tell stories, and so this gives them another character in their toolbox to be able to have your own adventure story or whatever it might be. So I just love those ideas. And then with all these kids, really just that whole idea, kids love to figure things out. And so just letting them get their hands on it, problem solving is the number one key. They're just letting them learn how to figure it out. What does this button do? What does that loop do? Those types of things.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think one of the common themes that you'll see about Pitsco and just STEM and education in general is the idea that we cannot be scared to learn through failure, right? Failure is where true learning happens. And so I think that it provides a platform for any learner to feel comfortable knowing that, hey, it's okay if I don't get this right the first time. That's how I learn, right? And so I think as specifically for these grade levels, the elementary grade levels, where maybe teachers aren't, literacy and math are so much of a focus in those grade levels. That's where their comfort is. There's a lot of times where we see educators, they're learning alongside their students the first time they ever see these, and they let their students know. They become a little more vulnerable and they say, hey, it's okay, we're going to learn this together, right? And be okay with that, because it gets the students to recognize that it's okay for us to tinker and test and then try again, right? Because most people don't get everything right the first time they try it. And if they did, we really wouldn't be learning. One other thing I thought about with CodeCube as another use case, working together and telling stories. I've seen situations where students will each have their own device, but they work them together to create a story as well. So Preston and Steph and I might each have our own CodeCube, and we're working in groups together to tell the story. But Preston's CodeCube might be doing different actions than mine is going to do. And we all have our own different parts of the story. We're still working individually, but we're also working collaboratively. So that's another unique way, CodeCube. I've also seen, like, we've heard of mood rings, right? So you can put this, it's a wearable, as Steph said, it comes with a slap bracelet. I've seen them on necklaces and those types of things, but depending on what mood you're in, you can flip it and it can show a different emoji, right? It can show a smiley face, it can show a tired face, it can show an upset face, right? So we can use that to even weave in a little bit of SEL and emotions in there to just another unique use case that I've heard it used that way before.
And going back to Jason's comment about how kids just love to figure things out. At the end of the day, what I like to define coding is coding is just the art of debugging. That's what it is typing in some code, making up the steps in the sequence, going back, hitting play, seeing it fail, and then going back and figuring out what's wrong with it and then moving on. So it's really the art of debugging is coding in that sense. So yeah, I loved what you said about that. So
last thing, and you'll hear this on the elementary side and in the early side when we go to grades pre-K through 2. But I think another thing for educators to understand and recognize, like, the value of coding and robotics and in computer science, is Pitsco really focuses on skills development. And as Preston said, it's not so much, Pitsco doesn't focus on a language, right? A lot of our solutions don't focus specifically on a coding language. There's thousands of different languages out there from a coding standpoint, programming standpoint. They all vary in different use cases and popularity. Our main goal is to teach the foundational principles of understanding it so that they can pick it up easier when they get into those upper grade levels, but then also develop those 21st century skills like thinking critically, as Preston was just talking, right? Thinking critically, being creative that we've talked about, and then communicating and collaborating, right? Working together in groups. So even with CodeCube, that it's a one-to-one. A lot of what we encourage is working in groups and learning how to work together as a team and to be able to communicate. And programming is a form of communication. It's a language, right? Learning how to talk to and speak with machinery and computers and those types of things. So skills development is going to be key with all of these solutions.
Well, and speaking of the various solutions, there are three that were available in the mini catalog at this particular level. And so CodeCube being one of those, and another one being the Smart Buddies. And so would like, just kind of as we're going through, and again, for a deeper dive on these, there's resources that would be available on the site. But for the sake of our webinar and just getting a little bit of an exposure and the opportunity to think about what this would look like in our Nebraska context, let's talk a little bit now, if we can, about Smart Buddies. What do we have here with this particular solution?
Yeah. So Smart Buddies it's a unique tool that focuses on increasing diversity awareness in grades 3 through 5 around STEM and STEM education. So each pack of Smart Buddies will have kind of a diverse group of characters that also have corresponding SIGGIs, and SIGGIs is where the technology is really happening. So the self-balancing scooters enables the students, regardless of their socioeconomic or ethnicity or gender or race, to envision themselves really working in a STEM and coding environment. So it's really about bringing the awareness of those different career paths, regardless of who you are or where you are. And it does it through the focus of storytelling. So there's an app that students use with their buddies in their different role models. Their role models have interests in different science, engineering, and arts backgrounds. There's also a digital graphic novel that accompanies each Smart Buddy that they kind of follow along, and they use their story as kind of the springboard into building the code that then their SIGGIs and their character kind of portray. And they also address different systemic and personal issues such as diversity, race, and gender. So it also brings those conversations to the forefront and helps educators be able to bring those types of topics to students in a way where they can have discussions and debates and reflect on topics such as diversity, race, gender differences, conflict resolution. So there's SEL components in it. So the curriculum kind of follows that flow, where it will introduce students pick which character that they would like to kind of connect with and follow, and then they get into the graphic novel. And one thing about the graphic novel is it really provides a background to the character that the students can start to relate to and kind of build that connection with. And then the curriculum takes them through different challenges that a Smart Buddy might face, or a different scenario, different problem they may encounter, choices, conflict resolution. So the graphic novel takes the students through this learning, and then they utilize the app to then program the SIGGI. So it's thinking similar to CodeCube, but now we're creating a more movable way of using coding for storytelling. So there's a corresponding app that goes with it.
Yeah, I might add, one of the big things that Pitsco focuses on outside of just providing a widget is the resources, but also the why. Why do we want to focus on this? And there's a stat that we can talk about when it comes to the opportunities that are going to be available for these learners when they become adults. And so if you think about the purpose of this is definitely, as Steph said, to be able to support the underrepresentation of minorities in STEM. Smart Buddies has the tagline, if you can see it, you can be it. And to kind of paint that picture of what that looks like. So in 2022, there were 1.8 million unfilled tech-related jobs in the US. 20%, so when we look at women, they make up 50% of the population, but only 20% of the individuals that are in tech jobs, right? And so from when we look at other underrepresented minorities, as far as like African Americans and Latinos, they make up a total of 29% of the population in the US, but yet they only make up 15% of the individuals that are currently in tech jobs. So it really is trying to engage everyone to recognize that they can do technology, they can do STEM, and really drive an interest in that area so that we can have individuals to be able to fill those jobs, because they're going to be in demand, they're high paying, and that's what we're trying to do as educators, is to prepare those learners for the world when they get there. And so we want to drive those interests as young as we can to help them to realize that before those biases get put into place, that everybody can do that.
And as Steph mentioned, it has that strong ELA component to it with the storybooks that are included in the app. I think within the app, there are different levels of reading that you can include. So let's say your student is at a beginner reading level. She can pick the story that's at the beginning reading level for that specific character. Same with like intermediate levels and things along those lines. And so it has that strong ELA component and storytelling that we've talked about with the other two solutions as well. So.
Yes, and similar to the Code Cube, there is a curriculum for the teacher to follow. Again, it outlines the areas of where the activities align so that as they're doing lesson planning, they can quickly look and see which activity would fit. But it really is about, the focus on storytelling with some coding challenges and allowing the students to kind of immerse themselves in the day of the life of their buddies and their backgrounds through language arts and science and math, and practicing those SEL skills. The ratio, just for educators kind of wondering what the ratio is one SIGI and Smart Buddy to 2 students. So they're working together and really focusing on that collaboration.
So what each school and each ESU would have gotten as part of this initiative that we've had with ESUCC and the governor's office is the all-inclusive 8-pack, which includes one of each of the 8 characters. So there's something to think about there as well.
So a lot of representation, and similar to what Jake shared around Code Cube, on the resource page, there will be the ability to know where to go to download depending on what device you're using, a quick start guide. There's teacher guides and presentations that are really easy for teachers to grab. So if they want to do a whole class, there's presentations that they can do to kick off the activity for the day, as well as those kind of lesson plans, discussion questions, terminology, any of those resources that are going to help them be successful in the facilitation, they'll be able to easily find on the resource page.
Terrific. Well, learning a little bit more about Smart Buddies. From our ESU colleagues here, where do you see that meeting our Nebraska classrooms?
Okay, so I guess I was thinking more along the lines of the SEL, thinking about the equity pieces that we're working with. And I think it's a great way to segue gently into some equity conversations with kids. I mean, it seems like it's a good fit.
This is one of the kits we didn't get, but I get it, and because of kind of where that conversation went, we actually bought the Code Cube and the U kit, which I think we'll talk about here in just a minute, for our special ed students that we have in a transition program. So they're the 18 to 21 year olds. I'm excited because I get to go there next week and kind of get them going, and where their place is going to be in their world. They might not be the ones doing all of the programming, but getting that background and being in that world and letting them see that they have a place, I think will be awesome.
That's terrific. Yeah, and maybe that is a good segue too, as you were mentioning the U-Kit. So let's go ahead and maybe talk about the third and final one that's going to be a part of this particular webinar and explore that particular solution. So I will go ahead and start to cue that up here as we learn a little bit more about that. And that is one, Craig, that you had actually, is that behind you right now?
Yes.
I thought so when we were getting started there you go. And so those have made it to Nebraska and are obviously here. And I'm glad that you got those to kind of feature as part of our conversation today. So
Sure. So the other 2 solutions, there's not a lot of design or engineering components to it. It's really heavily focused on the coding side of things and getting those basic skills, and then storytelling and SEL, using coding as the vehicle. So where the U-Kit is a little bit of a variation is this is more of an engineering design or a STEM plus C solution. So students are going to be presented with an activity that they're heavily aligned to NGSS. So for example, in the beginner kit, force and motion. So they'll explore force and motion. They'll explore wildlife and biology. They'll explore geology and biomechanics. And so kind of depending on which grade ranges those are being taught in, this kit can be utilized. The way that the content, this is a very robust curriculum that was designed to be used as a supplement in science. So a way to bring coding and robotics into science in a meaningful way. And so the students will be presented with their activity. There's a very robust app that provides step-by-step building instructions to get them to a finished model, and then they will iterate from there to start out with, and then there'll be some open-ended challenges. But the students will work through all with the kind of in the background happening, the science concepts that they will be exploring. And then as they progressively work through the lesson, they will test out code, they'll refine code, they'll do some experimentation, they'll make modifications, and they have a digital notebook that works alongside of them. Teachers have a very robust curriculum. It'll include videos and articles that they can share and resources that they can share with the students to kind of supplement along whichever science activity or science unit that they could choose to incorporate this with. In addition to the curriculum that comes with it, or was designed specifically for it, UB Tech also designed some AI curriculum. It does not require the physical kit, so it's kind of unplugged AI. So for teachers that are wanting to bring a little bit of understanding or experience around artificial intelligence, there's some unplugged activities that they can kind of sprinkle in between some of the lessons that they would be working through in the UKit. And there's again on the resource page, there's an unboxing video, because there are a lot of parts and pieces. When you talk about those engineering kits where students are really building and designing, there tends to be more resources in the kit. So there is an UKit boxing, beginner unboxing, and then a link to, depending on what device, where you go to get the app. There's a demo of the app. There's also a kind of an experience story of how a district utilized the kit for implementation. So there's a lot of different resources, again, wanting the teachers to ensure that what the teachers and students have access to is robust enough for success.
Yeah, I think with this one, Steph, as you mentioned, the difference between this and the other two that educators have seen on this particular webinar is the engineering aspect. And so one thing I can think about when working in a classroom with this is, as you've seen the common theme, Pitsco doesn't just drop it off and then let you just figure it out. There's a lot of resources and there's a lot of content and activities that help the teachers and the students feel comfortable and building up to a certain point. The neat thing with this is you can really implement, once you've gotten that foundational knowledge of how these things work and how to control it via programming, you can really do some neat projects through the engineering design process, right? And design thinking, where yes, you can build the models, but you can also iterate that over time, right? So you might build this model, but the teacher might ask, how can we improve upon this design, right? So now they get to tinker and test and adjust and imagine and recreate and build something even better than what they had before. I think one of the other things with this particular kit, it's probably the building experience is probably one of the most unique experiences that I think we have here. The application is actually a 3D rendering where you can zoom in, you can turn the model, and it goes step by step all the way through it. So as the student is engineering this piece or this robot or whatever it might be, this contraption, it's a really interactive application where they can, if they have a hard time seeing it, they can actually twist it and turn it and see underneath it in the 3D environment that they're working in. And then once that's done and completed, you can start programming it right from there. So definitely one of the more robust building experiences, I think, that we have for this age group.
And for this particular kit, with all the curriculum and activities that are included with it, it is really, I would like to say it's a science kit more than it is a coding and robotics kit. It incorporates science at the NGSS level with the forces in motion and all of that different NGSS content. So I like to call it more of a science kit more so than anything else.
Yeah, so one build, when Preston was talking about forces in motion, one of the builds that will be one of the first ones that they do is a golf club. And so they build a tee and they build a golf club that's on a motor, and they actually start to to test the different, speeds and how far the ball goes, and they get to kind of test and look and see the different variables that take place for how far, how high, right? All those types of things. You can talk about momentum for how far the ball's going to roll. A lot of different things you can do there, but just to kind of show a use case of what they could build, a golf club is one that is right off the bat.
Yeah, and it's the application, bringing that real world context to what they're learning in something hands-on and physical that they can experience with. So taking kind of the theory and putting it into practice. And the curriculum does a really nice job of progressing them through that while making sure that they have that kind of back-end knowledge and back-end understanding. And so the coding may not be at the forefront. They're using coding more as a practice and for experimentation than really getting into like the true coding applications and concepts. That happens along the way, but they're using the code, from like a scientist or an engineering from a testing standpoint.
All right. And so where do we see that meeting our Nebraska classrooms then? Once again, ask our ESU colleagues.
So I just love the NGSS of this. I mean, I just love the science connection. I love the building. I think it is such a natural connection to be learning and doing at the same time. So this one's a really good one too.
I really like the classroom component of this, but what this does is also allows kids to start making it personal to them. As you were talking, I'm just thinking of all the math and geometry that's involved in a tractor pull, and how many kids would just love to be able to develop a robotic pull or something like that. Just the engineering behind developing a fast car versus a powerful car. And, that's what gets kids excited about these things and gets them that hands-on experience to something that's relatable to them.
Yeah, I'll speak to the resources that are available on your website. That's what's helped me get started so I can go out and help teachers. But specific to this kit, just the freedom to build and have some creativity. It's nice to have resources that guide them through to get started.
Mm-hmm.
But then, all right, now let's see what you can do.
Absolutely. And that is the kind of the premise of the way that the curriculum is developed, is to give them enough to help them feel comfortable and confident and have that experience. But really it's that open-endedness for, okay, now that you've seen it, now what can you create, or how can you redesign and take those skills and put them into practice.
Terrific.
I will say that I'm not a good golfer, not a very good golfer at all, but I like that activity. So it was a lot of fun. So.
Oh, that's great. So Jake, if you would, once more, before we wrap things up today, can you show people where to go if they need to access some of those resources?
For sure.
And while Jake's bringing that up, I'll take the opportunity to say that Preston is actually going to be here in Nebraska in support at the Spring NETA conference. And so we're really looking forward to having him there as one of our vendor booths, right? Is that where you're going to be at, Preston?
Yeah, booth 509 is where I'll be. So.
Terrific. Well, we'll be excited to have you here, and that'll be an opportunity for people to get in-person support. And you'll also have some of the solutions on site, correct?
Yep, I will have them on site. We'll be there to answer any questions, and there'll be a giveaway as well. So
terrific. So if you're just watching this to learn and haven't purchased these yet, you obviously would have the opportunity to connect there with Preston and maybe even add to the resources and solutions that you did purchase if you're at all looking to do that. And so as we bring things to a close, Jake, will you tell us a little bit more about, again, how to find supports regardless of whether we're talking about CodeCube or Smart Buddies or the UKIT Beginner or any of the different solutions that we've made in this statewide buy?
For sure. And as we mentioned earlier on this call, I think one of the things that hopefully if anybody gets anything out of this conversation is that working with Pitsco, we are never going to leave you hanging. We pride ourselves on trying to provide industry level support and service, and that goes from just interacting with our team members that are available to be support for you, but then also providing resources. So I'm going to give just a quick general overview, regardless of the solution, of how you can get support from Pitsco. So the first thing that I'll mention is Preston talked about a URL that's going to be specific to this initiative that we'll be launching in February. So we will share that out in the very near future. That will make things very collected and easy. But in the meantime, and at any other point, I might point you to pitsco.com. So it's just www.pitsco.com. Up here in the header, there is a support page. There's a lot of different types of resources here, but if you click on the support page, if you're needing to contact somebody for support, we have a technical and product support team available year-round, even in the summer times, 7:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Central Standard Time, every day of the week. So there's a variety of ways that you can contact them. You can book a meeting with them so that we can have a virtual call. So if there's a scenario where you're needing to show a product, hey, I can't get this to work, you can look at their calendar, book a virtual meeting. You can also email them at support@pitsco.com. Call them. Will not be an automated dial system where you have to go through a bunch of things. There's going to be a live person on the other end. And then also on our website here, there is actually a live chat. So you just basically come in here and you'll choose the department, and it's going to be product support. Put your name in. You can start a live chat right on the spot. There's a lot of variety of resources here as well. Some self-help resources and those types of things. So there's one place you can go. Would also encourage you to take a look at the video gallery that's underneath Experience Pitsco. So as that loads up, there are a variety of resources from a video standpoint. You can search and filter through here, different grade levels, those types of things. Anything from promotional videos to how-to videos to troubleshooting and those types of things. The last thing that I'll mention, and this is going to kind of be the secret weapon here, is our global search. So I'll just search one of the things that we talked about today, and that is Code Cube. So one of the things that will happen is when I search in this global search field, it does show me the products because this is an e-commerce site. But if I scroll down, you can also see there's lab consumables, there's downloads. So here's a link to the web app that we showed on the Code Cube a little bit ago. Here's the videos that we're showing up for Code Cube. And then here's different pages and resources. So even the quick start guide. So that's a way to show anything that you're looking for in relation to a particular product. But then again, just the last reminder, if you go to the product detail page where you can purchase it, continue scrolling down, there's going to be a variety of resources that you have available to access, apps to download, activity guides, teacher guides to download. And so when in doubt, if you don't know where you're going, search for the product on this global search and it'll get you pointed in the right direction.
Particular session to a close. Are there any questions that we still have that we feel like maybe need to be asked prior to wrapping things up? And we're going to record a series of 4 here, and so we're behind the scenes going to do a couple of these today. And so are really grateful to Preston, to Jake, and to Steph for helping us to better understand these devices and solutions that have been purchased statewide, and certainly grateful to Jason, Craig, and Eileen for helping us to think about that in terms of what that means in our Nebraska classrooms, and really just bringing their expertise to today's conversation. And so, as we mentioned, check out the site for some of those unboxing how-to videos. Certainly access the site that was shown earlier for some of the supports for your learners. And we're really excited to just provide whatever support we can. So be sure to reach out to your local ESUs and to Pitsco if you have any questions after having watched this. So thanks, and make sure that you check out the rest of the resources on this page.